Thank
you wanted to talk about
the end of a country.
South Korea. So you sent out a thing in the group chat a couple of days ago about how South Korea is basically going to not exist in like 30 years.
Yeah.
Couple generations.
35 years.
Their birth rate is currently 0.7.
The lowest ever recorded.
2.1 is the minimum to have your civilization not die.
Right.
They're at 0.7.
Right.
It's fucking wild. I was watching this video you sent out, and
yeah, they're a third. They need to triple their production.
Like there's going to be this point in the very near future where they just have this massive like old aging people who are just consuming resources and just no young people to support them.
Yeah.
It's like a wild visual. You're talking about just complete
might be worth showing
collapse of society.
You know.
You're trying to put something up on the
Do
screen.
we have capabilities?
I don't know. I mean, it can't be any worse at the beginning of the pod, so.
Yeah, we might not have capabilities.
We might not.
We might not.
We don't know if the laptop works. What's on there's I just see a Hostess Cupcakes commercial on the TV right now.
Yeah.
Oh.
Doesn't look good.
It's not looking good.
So don't do it?
I don't think it's worth it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this channel, just so we're clear on what we're talking about, the title of the video on YouTube is South Korea is Over. Kurzgegast?
It's fucking over.
Kurzgegast? How do you say it?
It's like the worst branding of all time.
It is a great channel, but I can't say the name of the channel. Kurzgesagt.
That does not roll off the tongue.
Yeah. But that channel, I found like some great content in there, even outside of this content, which is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, they're known for, remember the egg?
The egg.
Remember they do one on the Fermi paradox?
Yeah.
They just break really interesting topics like this down,
and then like show it via cartoon, which is helpful.
I posted in the Discord. Go YouTube it if you haven't seen it. Highly recommend it. It's like a 10-minute video.
All right,
well worth your time.
I think people can grasp the gist of this.
Yeah,
the TLDR is this entire society, entire culture will be gone. Yeah. What bothers you the most about this? Because you saw this and you were like, "Fuck." Why does it matter?
Well, I think it's art designed to create a reaction, just like, I mentioned the same thing about the AI essay, right? 2020. What was that called? That essay?
AI 2027.
2027, yeah. And the idea here is that here's the most extreme example of what the infertility crisis and population collapse scenarios can look like. And it's actually not so much an infertility crisis, it's just literally population collapse because of societal and cultural issues in the country.
Yeah.
This isn't because people can't get pregnant. This is because people are choosing not to because they're being forced not to because they have nothing worthwhile to live for. One anecdote that's also really terrifying. Did you guys know that South Korea has the highest suicide rate in the world?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Insane, like what's going on in this country. And if you just read the comments,
the comment section,
you were saying,
the comment section of this video is incredible. It's like
heart-wrenching.
It's like Koreans talking about their own plight. It's fucking crazy.
It's really crazy. And so it's not simple, right? It's like they are forced to work long hours. They have not enough resources. They're not having fun. They're not supported. They don't have enough family. They don't have childcare, even if they wanted to find somebody and cohabitate and have some kids or whatever. It's just everything is working against them to be able to build these families, and it's only getting worse. I guess they had one good year last year where they finally just like kind of popped up a bit because they have awareness now of like what's happening, and it's like they have to solve this. But the scenario the video paints out is like you're going to have like one child for every 100 people.
Yeah, I think like it's easy to like math it out if you just like extrapolate for a few generations what happens. Like you end up with no people. That's what happens. I think what's interesting to me is to try to diagnose like why it's happening, and is this exclusive to Korea, South Korea, or is this like a phenomenon that's like, are we on the verge of this in like Western civilization?
Yeah. So the thing that, to double click on that, the thing that terrifies me the most about this is it's not just the end of a country. It's the end of a culture and a people and a race and a civilization. It's the end of Korea. Like all the history, everything that has ever existed from these people for generations will be gone. And even to solve it, like the risk of what is actually occurring in these societies where you have a less than 2.1, creation rate of children, is what you have on the line is actually much more important and much bigger than anyone is really highlighting. The only resolution is immigration, right? You bring in a lot of immigrants from other countries. Fine. What are you really doing? You're saving the nation. You're not saving the people. You're not saving the culture. You're not saving the race.
Totally.
You are literally just making sure the country doesn't collapse by bringing in, innovation and people and youth and energy to make sure that the economy doesn't fall apart. But the economy dying and the people itself dying, the civilization dying, the culture dying are two completely different things.
Totally.
What's terrifying is the end of a culture. This can happen in France. This can happen in many countries. This can happen in many Western countries.
I thought what was also scary is that like the people in the comments, I've never been to South Korea. I've flown through it, but I've never actually been there, so I don't know. But like the people in the comments were describing that the government is already enacting policies to try to mitigate this, decimation of their population. So like they're giving baby bonuses, they're giving stipends to help people with childcare. Like they're already like giving sort of like the financial sort of comforts that you would imagine. And even with that, the people, the populace is deciding still like, it's not worth it to me, which is shocking because you'd imagine that'd be like the Band-Aid solution, right? You'd be like, oh, well, the government just pay a little money, solve this. And what we're finding is that it's not.
They're lacking a unifying motivation, a unifying force, a unifying mission, a unifying vision.
A why.
They're lacking it. They clearly don't have it. You read the comments, you talk to people, your Korean friends, so whatever you want to do, okay, they're lacking this.
So one of the whys that I saw in the comments, and again, I've never been, so like I would welcome anybody to tell me why. But like what people were saying in the comments, one of their reasons why not was that because of the way their culture assigns expectation to all of them to a place where like you can never live up to this expectation, life doesn't actually become pleasant. It's like all of life to them feels like suffering essentially because the weight of expectation is so grandiose that everything just feels like failure, and they don't want to bring up a child in that culture, which is shocking to me.
And therefore, precisely why, in terms of all industrialized first world nations, they have the highest levels of depression, anxiety, suicide, and so on.
Totally.
They don't see a way out. People, when you don't see a way out and you feel trapped and everything is stacked and you have this, what's the point? So like, I think they're kind of like, it's like you're losing the game and you're like, well, we could give it a shot. There's this 1% chance if we do X, Y, and Z and everything goes according to plan, we can find a way out where future generations will survive and prosper. And I think they're just looking at it and saying, but like, why don't I just not make my life harder?
Yeah, I'll just live out my days in a more pleasant way.
Yeah,
and that's fine. And I guess like where I landed on it is kind of like wondering what's the difference in other westernized nations, because we also play by these similar sort of dogmas. Like I mean, maybe it's less extreme in the U.S., but like everyone still feels that pull. I believe.
Have you guys heard of the 4B movement?
No.
It's probably like one of the most sort of like radical feminist movements on earth, and it's Korean in origin. It's from like Korean women. It's basically just like an outright rejection of like marriage, dating, heterosexual sex with men, and childbirth, obviously. And I think a lot of it is rooted in bad stuff that men have done in Korean culture. but it's sort of like resulted in, obviously this to a large degree. And then, and I think that it's also popular with like a lot of, girls on TikTok in the West here, because they see like elements of it where they're like, yeah, fuck this shit. But it's so dangerous to society to have people buy into that, because you're basically committing suicide, like as a society, if you don't have babies, which is kind of, it's weird. Like I was actually having a conversation with like a girlfriend about this like a week ago, maybe. And I was just like, you have to have babies. Like you have to make more humans. Otherwise you cease to exist and like nothing matters. And she was just basically like, yeah, who cares? That was crazy to me. But it's just like, if you don't care about that, like, can you care about anything? Like what can you care about? Like if you don't even care about the human species, like going on.
It's the most nihilistic way of living I've ever seen.
I just feel like once you buy into that idea, like everything that is downstream of that thought, just
I'm not judging your friend. I'm actually just trying to diagnose what that is. Like, is that like really selfish because you're just saying like, I don't care about anything in the future. I just want to make my own life more comfortable. Is that what that is?
It's absolutely selfish. There's no other way. I mean, I'm trying to think of.
They wouldn't describe it as selfish.
I know they wouldn't, but that worldview.
Have you seen that like right wing meme where it just talks about how like people on the left like care more about like rocks than they care about like humans?
We had an whole episode.
We did an episode on it, right? I think that they genuinely are of the belief that humans are bad and rocks are good and nature's good and we're bad. So anything that eliminates us,
nonsense. Like the universe without the spark of consciousness of humanity is not the same universe anymore. Like, what is it? We just want to make sure that Mama Earth is happy and we're not here anymore. That's the outcome. That's insane.
I know. And okay, so I'm gonna tell you what I did at this point in time. And I was drinking. So don't judge me too harshly.
No, but drunk Steven talking to people that he disagrees with is probably my favorite.
So I'm talking
going higher.
Yeah, a lot of high pitch.
I'm talking to this girl. And she's trying to tell me about what humans are bad. It'd be better if like we didn't exist or anything. And I was just like, so you just think humans are just sort of inherently like a drag on Earth? It'd be better if there were like less of us. She's like, yes. I'm like, so I go, so why don't you just kill yourself?
That's awful.
Wow. I know, but I wasn't telling her to kill herself. But my autistic brain is just like, okay, you think there would be better if there were fewer humans?
Yeah, you were doing like a logic.
You first.
You were doing like a logic problem.
And then she was like, no, obviously. But then I was like, why? Why don't you? And then like at this point, the discussion kind of went off the rails, and it didn't turn into the deep introspective thing I thought it would, where she would be like, yeah, why don't I want to kill her? She just started like
it was
calling me like an asshole.
Unproductive after that.
Yeah, so it didn't go well. It didn't go well, and I understand why it didn't go well. But like I still think there's like a point in there, which is that like everybody who says this, like right, if I ask any of them to like jump off a cliff, none of them will do it, and it's just like, well, why? Because there's like there's like
same as people who want to take care of everybody, and the moment you say like, all right, have this person move in your home, they're like, well, not me. I mean. Somebody else.
Yeah.
It's the same shit. It's the same shit. So other countries, by the way, China, obviously, 1.1, 1.0. A lot of Asian countries, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, but also Italy, Spain, Ukraine, Portugal, Japan also in the East. And
below the 2.1 threshold.
Way below. These are all around 1.2, 1.3. Do you know what the US is?
2.1?
No,
it's below.
We dropped from 1.78 in 2022 to now 1.62.
Yeah, we're just making up the difference with immigration.
2%.
It's immigration that's solving our issues.
Yeah, I mean, the good news for us is we're a melting pot, and our culture will persevere. I hope, right? But I'm just I'm very sad to see the situation in these countries.
Armand, like, I'm 6 weeks in to having one child.
Mm-hmm.
I can empathize with people who are saying that's not for me. This shit is so hard. and it's like it's in many ways awful at the beginning, and the payback comes over a lifetime, right? So you get the benefit on a long tail, but in the immediate, it's like
it's the Dick Van Dyke that we got banned for.
Yeah. So you have this immediate cost, and the cost is not just like a financial cost. It's like an energy and emotional. It's like everything.
Yep.
And then you get like this like long tail payoff, which I think is like insurmountable. Like, and you and I think it's no brainer. We'd agree that like you would never trade it for anything. But I can understand why people would like view it and be like, no thanks.
It's a symptom of soft times, though, bro. Like, no one feels the responsibility and the burden that they need to carry right now. There is something that has existed throughout the cycles of humanity that people just accept the fact that their job is to procreate. They just know that inherently. It's just what you do. But a symptom of soft times is this. Everything is, in so many ways so good. Obviously also very turbulent and challenging politically and culturally. Don't get me wrong. Of course, things are very challenging economically. I get all of that. But in so many ways, you have so much privilege that you allow yourself, that you can afford yourself selfishness.
Okay, so I like this idea.
So you don't carry this burden of like, I am here to sustain humanity. That is like one of the things I was like born with. That is like a mandate of mine.
Yes. This is the thing that kind of grinds my gears a little bit, because this is the thing people say. So the very common thing you'll hear from people is just like, oh, you want me to have kids in this economy? I can't afford to do this. I can't afford to do this. But the very fact that you're even saying that in the first place shows that there's just been this like complete fucking inversion of like the priorities of life that is enabled by the fact that you live in such a cushy society. So because society is so cushy, you're sitting here being like, well, I can't have kids because of X, Y, Z. The mere fact that you say that is like emblematic of how cushy society is, because 1,000 years ago, nobody would have ever said that. You just have kids. Like that is life. And you just do that. And then you figure out all the other fucking shit after that. But now like we live in this thing where it's just like, okay, well, this isn't like the thing. It's like a thing. And it's a thing that like I should do, like I want to do, but it's not like a must do. And because it's like an I want to do, now I'm like, I can't do it. So like I feel burdened by these other things. So I'm not going to do it.
So when like I know you had just looked up the stats on a lot of nations that were underperforming the 2.1 sustainability level. I had previously looked up some nations that were well above it, and they were all like kind of like the poorer ones, like a lot of poor nations. And I was wondering if that was like chicken or the egg. Like, is that Steven's point that they just like don't have the privilege of even asking the question, or is it like, yeah, I guess like with the privilege thing, is it like they don't have have access to like prophylactics or something?
Holy shit! Some of these countries fucking produce humans.
These countries,
Angola, 5.76. Congo,
we're
5.5.
We're gonna get crushed by Africa.
Africa
fertility rates
6.7 in Niger, Benin, Uganda. It's all Africa. Somalia, South Sudan, Burundi.
It is like an interesting thing that you bring up, which
All
is like
above 5.
Why does prosperity lead to
less?
Because it leads into what I'm talking about, right? Where it's just like the most prosperous nations are the very ones where people are like, well, I can't afford this.
Yes.
It's like there's something weird about it that doesn't quite make sense.
Well, there's prosperity, but there's culture. So these cultures are reliant on each other, and they're more community focused and based. So the idea of like paying somebody $5,000 a month for childcare is like absolutely hilarious to them. The idea is that your community is raising your children alongside you, and you got 6 to 10 kids, and that's not a big deal. That's completely standard. They have 19 uncles and aunts.
Yeah.
And you're fine and they're fine.
I think it's just an excuse people make up, right? I think with prosperity comes a lot of shiny objects, and people just like the shiny objects better, and then they make up these reasons why I can't have kids. But in reality, it's just because like, oh, I just like all these shiny objects and I don't want to.
I agree with that, but I also actually believe that the way society is constructed in the West is working against our ability to procreate, right? Like I
agree with that.
Genuinely feel that the way these societies are constructed you're seeing the problem in Asia, which is really interesting, but in Africa, this community focused, and maybe Central Asia, I assume the numbers are higher. In India, it's higher. That community focused child, raising, bearing situation really enables people to feel more comfortable to raise. There's this one thought I just had as well. It's really important. Like if you won the lottery, would you be giving with your money toward like people that you love and donate toward causes that you care about more than maybe you are today? I think most people would.
Probably, yeah.
Right? Like winning the lottery is one of the great blessings and fortunes. You literally won the lottery. I think what people don't realize at a core fundamental level is existing itself is the greatest gift of all time. You won the lottery. You are alive. Somebody had to make you. You're a 1 in a trillion chance of being here on this planet today. That is unbelievable. And part of that should be instilled in us is that because you had the great fortune of being alive, you deserve and you should take on the burden and the responsibility to provide that opportunity to somebody else. That doesn't get discussed at all, ever.
Yeah.
It is the greatest miracle of all to be alive. Why not offer that to more souls, to more beings?
Yeah.
I think people just don't feel grateful because I think when life is easy for you, you sort of lose sight of the fact of how hard things actually are if you zoom out and like have perspective. And then because you don't have that, you don't appreciate stuff. And then you start kind of like hating on all of the very stuff that allows you to exist because you don't have the framework to appreciate it. And then in doing so, you sort of destroy that very structure. This is the sort of like weak men create hard times, hard times create strong men thing. And like why we are sort of like, as we were talking about, in that weak men create hard times phase, because we are in a time where I think people have lost sight of like Western society, especially, and why it's so good and why it has enabled us to thrive in a way that we have. And you see people sort of like turning against it without kind of appreciating the elements of it that allow them to exist. And then so as a result, we end up having this battle for Western society where we may even end up destroying it. And we may have to reinvent the whole
clearly,
wheel.
Yeah, we're going to have to reinvent society.
Well, hopefully not. Hopefully
some of these societies are going to die. Some of these cultures are going to die. And humanity will have to go through a form of resurrection. Like there will be a sort of depletion of population. And then those hard times, when they're fully embodied, people will unify toward this cause of like, okay, it's important to do this. And they'll do it again and rebuild, but it'll be different.
I like the way you describe it in terms of like a culture dying, because like as a capitalist, I think of like the inefficiencies that will be created. So like in South Korea, if there's no young people, then like that will create a demand for an influx of young people, and there'll be like great opportunity for people to go there and like work jobs where they can like make a great living. And I think that will probably occur, but to your point, they won't take with them the culture of the South Korean predecessors.
But what's interesting if you game out how this all plays out is that in the US especially, you wouldn't have this like society-wide thing where just like everybody stops having babies, blah blah blah, right? Because you have these like two different Americas. It's similar to what you have in Israel, right? Where you have this like right-wing portion of Israel that actually has tons of babies, and they've sort of like legitimately like put themselves into the majority of government, but just like out reproducing the other side. And like we would probably have a similar thing here, where you have this sort of like right-wing segment of the country that is like kind of more rural, more into Jesus and everything, and like sort of more into family, and they have more babies. So you could kind of like game through this like weird scenario where like half of the country, decades in the future ends up in this weird spot where there's like two old people for like every young person. And then that segment of society sort of is like collapsing. And then there's this like other segment of the country that is just still normal. It's like the rural religious segment, the God-fearing segment. There's just been like having more babies and like all that structure is intact. So you could kind of see this like weird kind of thing where like there's people living or born into this society and they're like, fuck this. This is turning into like a fucking nightmare. Like I'm like slaving away to like support all the old people and like there's nothing here for me. And then they kind of like find their way into the South and it's just like, oh, you're just working on farms and shit with your family and everything's kind of cool. And it so like the whole thing wouldn't like go off the rails in the same way at the same time. Like you would have like a bifurcation of like society A and society B. And then like you would have people like probably trying to defect into that society. Like if I was a young person and I was born into that society where I'm like, wait a minute, I'm 22 and I'm basically just funding this like massive social security program for these old people who are just sucking up all the resources. I'm in like a pyramid scheme. Like I would want to defect. I would just be like, screw this. I'm just gonna go to church and like work on the farm over here or something. You know, I would just like opt out. Kind of a weird thing to think through, but I think that's what would happen.
I was just thinking, I've like really latched onto this idea of like this like choose your hard type mentality where like everything's hard, but just you get to choose your pathway, I guess. And I was wondering if like on a societal level, this also exists. Like the society exists as a fractal of like micro choice. So what I mean by that is like getting people to raise children and like start their own families is hard. Getting people to like take care of elderly is hard. Choose your hard. Like, is that like a real choice?
So people still are trying to not choose hard, which I think is the problem. I think the object is to like have no hard at all.
Mm-hmm.
But like, not only is choosing hard inevitable, it's also good because it gives you like meaning and purpose, I think, in a way that isn't like immediately obvious to you. And then also it like causes you to grow and evolve and develop, which is kind of the whole freaking point of life.
Yeah.